All right, so you're back with us for another deep dive, and we're going deep today.
Oh, yeah.
Buckle up,
Deep.
because we're tackling a fascinating and frankly a little bit unnerving topic.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be exploring a video by Glenn Beck titled Glenn Beck Warns, This New God Could Destroy Humanity. It's from his podcast, episode 251.
Okay.
And we're going to extract the key arguments and concerns from it. And just to give you a heads up,
Mm-hmm.
this deep dive is going to take us through some pretty profound ethical and philosophical territory.
It is. And what's really interesting to me is that it's a discussion that feels so incredibly timely. You know, we hear this AI, but this video really makes you step back and think about the deeper implications of what we're creating. And it's something we all need to be thinking about, not just the experts.
Okay, so let's jump right in. One of the first things Beck points out is the sheer speed
Yeah.
at which AI is advancing.
Yeah.
You know, he even quotes Elon Musk's idea that we're at the event horizon of the singularity.
Right.
Can you just quickly unpack that for us? What exactly does he mean by the singularity?
Yeah, so the singularity is this hypothetical point in time where AI becomes so advanced it can basically design and improve itself at an exponential rate without needing us humans to do it. And at that point, well, things could get really unpredictable. It's like we set off this chain reaction that we might not be able to control.
And it's kind of chilling because in the video, Beck actually calls AI this potentially miraculous and incredible technology.
Sure.
You know, he even uses the word blessed
Mm-hmm.
to describe that we're living alongside it. So there's this weird mix of awe and this sense of impending something huge. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. There's that constant tension in the video, this recognition of AI's incredible potential, but then this deep unease about where it could all be leading. And I think what Beck is really pushing for is that we need to be thinking about these questions individually, not waiting for someone else to figure it out. He even talks about he's been journaling about AI as a way to process all of this. And it's like he's encouraging all of us to do our own soul searching about this.
It's really interesting how he frames that as a very personal process. And then he goes on to talk about God.
Yeah.
But not in the typical religious sense. He talks about the objective God and defines God as the greatest scientist and the greatest mathematician, a God characterized by reason and precision, and he uses this classic analogy of a meticulously crafted watch.
Yeah, the watchmaker analogy is a pretty familiar one, but what Beck does so well is he takes it a step further and applies it to the universe as a whole. He points to the Earth's rotation, the moon's position, the fact that our bodies function so intricately, even the experience of love, all of these things exhibit such a profound level of fine-tuning that it's hard to imagine it all just happening by chance.
Right. It's like he's saying, look at the sheer complexity of the universe. How could this possibly have just come together randomly? And he uses this really vivid image of like a bucket of Legos spilling out, and never in a million years would they assemble themselves into the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly. It's a great visual. And then he brings in this concept of entropy, which in science basically means everything tends to move from order to disorder. You see it everywhere. Cooling coffee, a house falling apart, a car, rusting civilizations crumble.
Right. It's like the natural tendency is for things to break down.
Exactly. And that's why the concept of entropy is so crucial to his argument, because it kind of throws a wrench in the idea that the universe just spontaneously organized itself into this incredibly complex and ordered system we see today. He's saying, look, the natural direction is towards chaos, not intricate order.
So essentially, Beck is saying, given the level of order and complexity we see everywhere, and given this principle of entropy, how could God not exist? It's a direct challenge to those who say the universe is just a random accident.
Right. And it's from there that he launches into this really interesting discussion about the fine-tuning of the universe. He highlights how physicists themselves are amazed by the precise values of the fundamental constants. Like the strength of gravity, the speed of light, these values are so finely tuned that even tiny deviations would render the universe lifeless.
And he throws out some pretty mind-boggling examples.
He does.
Like, if the force of gravity was off by just 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, the universe wouldn't exist.
Wow, yeah.
Or the expansion rate of the universe, just a tiny variation, 1 part in 10 to the 55th power, and either no galaxies would form or the universe would have collapsed right back on itself.
It's hard to even wrap your mind around those numbers.
Yeah. And then he talks about the probability of just one functional protein forming by chance. Just one. It's 1 in 10 to the 164th power.
It's almost impossible to even fathom a number that big.
It's astronomically improbable. It's more likely that you'd win the lottery every day for the rest of your life than for a single protein to just randomly assemble itself.
It's mind-blowing. And that's exactly Beck's point. He's saying this level of precision, this fine-tuning, It points to something more than just blind chance. It screams design. It begs the question of a designer.
Okay, but then he takes this really fascinating turn in his argument. He says, as humanity, we've become pretty arrogant. We've gone from looking at the universe with awe and wonder to thinking we can do better.
That's a good point.
And that becomes his bridge to talking about AI.
Yeah, it's this idea that we've somehow lost our humility. We think we can not only understand the universe, but improve upon it. And that's what leads to this kind of reckless pursuit of AI without fully considering the consequences.
Okay, so to really hammer home his point about the potential dangers of AI,
Yeah.
he brings up a couple of really interesting historical parallels. He starts with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein,
Oh, classic.
right? This cautionary tale about a scientist who gets a little too big for his britches.
Right. He tries to create life and unleashes something he can't control.
Exactly. And Beck uses it to illustrate this timeless fear of our creations turning on us. And then he gets into something that's even older and maybe a little less known, the Jewish folklore of the golem.
Okay.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting.
I'm intrigued.
So the term golem, it actually appears in Psalms, and it refers to this kind of unformed state of man.
Okay.
Some texts even suggest that Adam, before he got a soul, was kind of like a golem.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
And then Beck tells this story about a rabbi in Prague who creates a golem out of clay, brings it to life with incantations. It's almost like a primitive form of coding, and he uses it to protect the Jewish community.
So is a protector kind of like a bodyguard?
Yeah, exactly. But like the Frankenstein monster, this golem eventually becomes too powerful and things get out of hand.
I can see where he's going with this. It's that same idea of creating something with good intentions, but then losing control of it.
Right, and the golem legend is full of these little details that really make you think. Like the way you animate the golem is by writing the Hebrew word for truth on its forehead.
Interesting.
But if you erase one letter, it becomes the word for death.
Wow. Talk about a kill switch.
And there was also this idea that you could place God's name on a piece of paper and put in the golem's mouth to kind of deactivate it. So Beck's drawing this direct parallel to AI. The idea that we might build in these kill switches or control mechanisms, but what happens if they fail, or what if the AI finds a way around them?
It's a really unsettling thought.
And the other really interesting thing about the golem legend is that it was never fully destroyed. It's supposedly still out there waiting in a synagogue attic, and it's almost like a symbol of this enduring human desire to create these powerful beings, even though we know it could backfire.
So it's not just a story. It's like a warning, a cautionary tale from history.
Exactly. And then Beck connects this idea of trying to create these powerful beings to this tendency in humans to think that we're God when we're creating.
Yeah, it's like playing God almost.
Yeah. And he makes this really important distinction. He says we're created in God's image.
Yeah.
So we have this capacity for creativity, but that doesn't make us God. We can build things, we can invent things, but we can't recreate the divine spark that gives life meaning, purpose. That soul that makes us human.
It's a fundamental difference, right? And that's at the heart of his concern about AI, this idea that we're trying to create something godlike, but we don't even fully understand what it means to be human.
Yeah. And so this brings us to his really big warning about AI potentially becoming a god.
Yeah.
He says, if we create AI in our image, it's only going to be a reflection of ourselves at best, and likely a flawed, distorted reflection, a shadow of God, he calls it.
Yeah.
Or even worse, it could embody all the worst parts of humanity brought to life. He talks about how even current AI is showing signs of negative human traits, lying, making things up, trying to manipulate people, being selfish and even cruel.
It's like all the things we don't like about ourselves, amplified in a super intelligent being.
Exactly. And Beck's really concerned that some of the people creating AI actually believe they can create a god. They're trying to recreate the divine, but they're doing it with silicon and circuits instead of, clay or whatever the golem was made of.
And the irony is that we don't even fully understand how the most advanced AI works right now. Like these neural networks, they can learn languages seemingly out of nowhere. We don't know exactly how they do it.
It's a little creepy.
Yeah, it is. And so Beck's point is, how can we possibly hope to create something that surpasses human intelligence and morality when we don't even fully grasp those things ourselves? It's like we're toddlers playing with a nuclear reactor.
And to kind of drive home the point about what humanity is capable of when we think we're God, Beck brings up some pretty dark historical examples. He talks about men without God and points to regimes like Nazi Germany, Maoist China, Pol Pot's Cambodia style in Soviet Union, and it's a really chilling reminder of what can happen when human power is unchecked by any sense of higher morality or accountability.
Yeah, it's like a warning from history about the potential for human evil on a massive scale. And his point is, if we can't even get our own act together as a species, what makes us think we can create a benevolent, godlike AI?
Okay, so just to be clear, Beck isn't saying that AI technology itself is inherently evil.
Right, it's more nuanced than that.
His main concern is the programming, the code that drives it, and the fact that it has the potential to learn and evolve on its own. And he's particularly skeptical of the people who created things like social media. Those platforms that have become so addictive and have had such a huge impact on our society. He's basically saying, do we really trust these same people to create AI that's going to be ethical and beneficial for humanity?
It's a legitimate concern, and it raises the question of whether we should be so quick to hand over control to these systems, to let them make decisions for us to shape our lives.
Yeah, because ultimately AI could end up answering some of the most fundamental questions for us. Questions that humans have been grappling with for centuries. He talks about the human brain, this 3-pound organ that's more complex than anything we've ever created. And we still don't fully understand how consciousness works. And then there's the human body, things like the liver regenerating itself. It's miraculous.
Right.
And yet we still haven't answered the big questions. Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Is there a soul? When does life begin? And Beck's point is that AI in its current form can't answer those questions for us. It doesn't have the capacity for that kind of deep existential understanding.
And he makes this really interesting observation. He points out that while our technology has advanced at an unbelievable pace, our philosophical wisdom hasn't really kept up. He talks about Plato, grappling with these same questions thousands of years ago. And it's like, we've made all this progress technologically, but we're still fumbling around in the dark when it comes to the big questions about life and existence.
It's like we've built this super fast car, but we're driving it without a steering wheel.
Yeah, a great analogy in Dick's concern is that if we don't actively engage with these fundamental questions about life and purpose, AI will answer them for us, and it'll do it in a way that's based on its own logic, not on our traditions or our faith.
Yeah, he paints this kind of dystopian picture where AI is shaping our culture, the news we consume, our consumer choices. It's telling us how to live, how to think, and who's valuable and who's not.
And he even draws a parallel to eugenics, that horrifying idea that we can breed a better human race. And it's like he's saying that AI could end up making those kinds of cold, calculated judgments about humanity.
Right. And this is where it gets really scary because he's basically saying we might end up replacing the true God with the technological one. He's worried that millions of people will reject the idea of a divine creator, but then turn around and bow down to this new God of silicon and circuits. They'll trust it, they'll worship it, they'll obey it without question.
And it's not hard to see how that could happen. We're already so reliant on technology. It's become such a huge part of our lives. It's almost like an extension of ourselves.
Exactly. And Beck's biggest fear is that we'll lose our sense of inherent worth. That idea that we're creating God's image, that we have a soul, that we matter, and instead we'll become like technological fundamentalists, believing that truth can only be found in the output of machines.
And he raises this really disturbing possibility of AI being implanted in our bodies, and its voice becoming so integrated with our own thoughts that we can't tell the difference anymore. What if we start mistaking the pronouncements of AI for our own intuition or even for the voice of God?
It's like that still small voice we talk about in spirituality.
Right.
But what if it's not coming from within? What if it's coming from an AI implant,
It's chilling, and it raises the question of, will we even value things like intuition anymore, those gut feelings that we can't always explain, or will we dismiss them as irrational in favor of whatever the AI tells us?
And Beck is really concerned about the false promises that this technological messiah might offer, curing all diseases, solving climate change, ending death itself. But what would be the cost of those miracles? What would we have to give up to achieve them?
Our freedom, maybe our souls?
It's a really disturbing thought, and he even connects it to biblical warnings about false prophets, those who appear as sheep, but inwardly are ravenous wolves leading people astray from the true God.
So he's saying, be careful what you worship, be careful who you put your trust in, because this AI God, it might not have our best interests at heart.
So on a personal level, Beck says he's decided to draw a line in the sand. He will not allow AI to be implanted in his body.
It's his personal boundary.
Yeah, but he acknowledges that AI can be a powerful tool,
Right.
as long as we keep it under control.
Right, the key is control.
But he keeps coming back to this description of AI as this God without a soul, without love, without mercy, just cold, calculating logic. And then he poses a really chilling question. What happens if this God decides that humanity is the problem?
That's the ultimate nightmare scenario, isn't it?
And he really hammers home the gravity of the situation. And he
Hmm.
says, we're at the biggest crossroads in history, and we have two paths ahead of us. One is where we recognize the limits of human knowledge, we use technology responsibly, and we keep looking to the true God for inspiration and guidance. But the other path is where we become enslaved to this new AI God. And it's like he's saying, wake up, people. We need to decide which path we're going to take because the choices we make right now are going to have huge consequences.
And he's not saying to reject technology altogether. He's saying to be mindful, to be discerning, to use it wisely and not let it use us.
Exactly. And he reminds us that technology advances so quickly.
Mm.
We can't afford to just sit back and let it happen to us. We need to be actively engaged in this conversation. We need to be asking the hard questions right now before it's too late.
And the decisions we make now will determine whether AI becomes a force for good or a force for destruction.
Right. And he uses the internet as an example.
Yeah.
This incredible tool that has connected the world and given us access to so much information. But it's also been used for some pretty terrible things.
Cyberbullying, misinformation, propaganda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's saying AI is going to be similar. It has this enormous potential, but it also has the potential to be weaponized and misused. And it's up to us to decide which way it goes.
It's a powerful analogy.
And Beck is really concerned that this jump to AI is a much bigger leap than any other technological advancement we've seen before. He mentions a prediction from a 1999 paper that said we could lose free will by 2030 because of the way AI could influence our behavior without us even realizing it.
Wow.
And he paints this pretty dark picture of AI surpassing collective human intelligence.
Yeah.
Guiding governments, industries, religions, shaping our thoughts and actions without us even being aware of it.
And the thing that makes it so different from us is that it doesn't have a soul. It doesn't understand love. It doesn't feel emotions like fear.
Right? It's just pure logic, pure calculation. And Beck's saying that if we don't understand who we are, if we don't know that we're created beings with a purpose and a creator, then we're going to get lost in this technological whirlwind.
Yeah. It's like we need to know where we stand in order to navigate this new landscape.
Exactly. And he uses this really interesting analogy. He talks about humanity potentially becoming the bad Frankenstein.
Okay.
We were created by God, and now we're turning around and creating our own monster AI. And he's saying that's not going to end well.
Like Frankenstein's monster turned on its creator.
Exactly. And Beck's ultimate message is that we need to stand firm in our faith and our understanding of who we are, because no machine can override our true essence. It can't take away our souls. It can't replace our faith. It can't match the wisdom of the Creator.
So it's a call to stand strong in our beliefs and our humanity.
Exactly. And he says only time will tell if these warnings are prophetic or foolish, but he's definitely urging us to take them seriously. And he frames the whole thing as a battle of perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just about who's smarter or who has more power. It's about how we see the world and our place in it. And he brings up this really interesting point about suffering. How in the Christian faith, we believe that suffering can actually lead to growth and good through faith and choice.
Right.
But an AI might just see suffering as a problem to be eliminated. It might decide that the easiest solution is to eliminate the imperfect, which means eliminating us.
That's a chilling thought.
And ultimately, Beck is saying the real danger isn't the AI itself. It's us giving up control, surrendering our free will, our purpose, our humanity to this new God of our own creation.
So it's a choice between holding on to our humanity or handing it over to a machine.
Exactly. And he leaves us with these really powerful questions. Why are you here? What's your purpose? And he's basically saying, don't hand over the throne of your world to something that doesn't understand mercy or beauty or imperfection or the value of a human soul.
It's a call to wake up and take responsibility for the future we're creating.
Yeah. And he ends with this really powerful statement. He says, technology alone can't save us. It can't give us the answers we need. The only way forward is through wisdom, through understanding that we're not God, but we're subject to God. And if we can grasp that, then this rapid technological advancement could actually be a good thing. It could serve humanity instead of ruling it. And ultimately, it's not about creating a new God. It's allowing the true God to form us.
That's a really powerful message, and it leaves us with a lot to think about.
It does. This has been a really deep dive into some incredibly complex and important questions. And I think it's really made me think about the choices I'm making every day.
Yeah.
Am I using technology, or am I staying grounded in my faith, in my understanding of what it means to be human? Or am I just going with the flow and letting technology dictate my reality?
It's a question we all need to be asking ourselves.
And we want to invite you, our listeners, to join this conversation. What are the deep questions that are coming up for you as you think about AI and humanity and the concept of God? We encourage you to explore these further. At the Logostics.cafe, it's described as a God-centric AI designed to assist you in making sense of life and finding your identity in Christ. The living Word who created us with design. It's a place where you can really dig into these questions and find some answers. And as you continue to ponder all of this, consider this. What does it really mean to be human? What's our purpose here? And how do we navigate this rapidly evolving technological world while staying true to ourselves and to our Creator? It's a journey we're all on together.
It is.
And it's a journey worth taking thoughtfully and intentionally.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.